Jack Tite, no, going into WTC terrain has a different outlook than some of us in America, where we're very familiar with running a variety of vehicles, is what I'll say, right? We actually have access to using kill rigs, larger vehicles. Truck spam doesn't feel as door stoppy, in a sense, or parking lotty. And therefore, in the WTC, their boards are sometimes perceived a little more dense. Therefore, you can't move the vehicles around as easily. Of course, you can still run trucks and such. But I can see why he has a totally different outlook. I'm not going to say I understand exactly how he took this list. Mobs of Boys wasn't on everybody's first guess for More Dakka for their first winning event list. Of course, we all love them boys, but I can start to unpack in my mind how this actually works, which is what we want to do around here and get ideas. That's why we like to be creative. Whenever you think of a new detachment, new list, data sheets come out, we all talk about what's strong and what is obviously good and appealing, but a lot of the time, very successful players are simply creative and fearless players to an extent, right? Where they don't care what everybody else is bringing to the degree that they don't think it's untouchable if they don't bring the exact same thing. So in this case, he was a great example in that by bringing mobs of boys with some pain boys. So with more Dakka list, he has 2 Big Macs with shock attack guns, one with targeting squints, and then one with Gob Dundabus. So I think the Gob shot Gundabus is kind of usually just if you have extra points. And then he has a third Big Mac with shock attack gun. Double Painboys, one's the the Warlord, and then Zagrat Wartsnagger. 2 20-man units of boys, 3 truck, 2 5-man units of Gretchen, a 22-man size Gretchen unit, and a minimum size unit of Gretchen, 3 10-man units of Lootas, and then 3 units of Tankbustas. The sergeants both brought rocket pistols. Absolutely love the idea of using the boys. A lot of the time what's happening across, the 40K community when they're thinking about, well, if you have to face more Dakka, this is what you got to do. You got to pressure them. You got to infiltrate. Got to get in their face. And they're right, because a lot of the time people are already looking at it as, I'm just going to put trucks on the door. I'm going to drive towards you. I'm going to disembark and shoot at you, or I'm going to stage up, get out of the vehicles, advance, and then shoot at you, and then charge, right? So in this case, he was like, well, I'm actually going to have something to create space and actually create layers so you can't reach my Dakka. And you do have to put full commitment of your army into this unit, whether it's melee or shooting. Most armies don't have a specific unit that are going to one-shot 20 boys when they have the Pain Boy, and specifically if they're in the wall. Not to mention that a 20-man unit of boys that has wide at demand means that it has the defensive output, but also the threat range. So when you're staging in some of these L-shaped pieces of terrain, and you can actually stage up boys in there, you can declare the wall, you run right out of there, you flip the enemy's primary objective. If you're really good at swinging boys, a lot of the time, which simply means when you declare the charge and you've finished the charge, you've intentionally or unintentionally had already based the model completely. Therefore, the remaining models can kind of string out and go in different directions. If you ever watch a high level Green Tide player, or that I'll demonstrate hopefully on the channel soon, hint, I've already been making content for that, but that you can witness what it means to actually move out and kind of swing mobs of boys to take up more of the field and interact with different units and pile into combats that they didn't actually declare in the charge, and also swing objectives even if the unit isn't specifically on it, right? That they're charging. So these 20-man mobs act as not only a defensive layer for your guns and your Dakka, but it acts to kind of add as a big old fat net if for these armies, for example, like World Eaters that a lot of people are having an issue with, where they're running up and touching a truck, popping a truck, then consolidating into the unit, then the unit can't fall back. Well, in this case, it's like run into my boys. They have a little bit of their ability to kill them, but it takes a lot of your 8-bound to actually kill the whole unit. And then in this case, we just pick you up in that after that. If not, if you play a little bit more defensive, we get to walk up the field. We stage up in the middle with these mobs of boys. We declare the charge and go interact with either near your home objective, retaining our natural expansion, flipping the middle at will, and then having Zod go attack your natural expansion. So there's a bunch of different ways this could be very appealing. I don't know exactly on WTC that I can say that I would want to bring like 20 boys in from reserve, but that's another option. Maybe not saying that he did it. Of course, you're putting on the table as an orc player, need to unpack this. If you cannot hide 20 or 20-man boys because he simply doesn't have a wagon, for example, right? And you're playing on some of these GW layouts where there's only one good spot to simply stage 20 boys and then move towards the middle. In this case, maybe a big unit 20 might go on reserve for Americans in our case. But he still bought 3 trucks. That's where we're talking about specifically maybe for the Lootas. But in some cases, people like to bring the Lootas in reserve because they have longer lines of sight. Sometimes they'll put Tankbustas and then 5 flash gets into the truck and act as a very active SWAT team. And that helps Tankbustas actually stage up closer and get within the 12 inches. Be in mind, now you have to actually see to use your bomb squig. Therefore, you have even more incentives to get in than 12 inches and to actually see them so you can shoot your rocket pistols. So therefore, you see his double rocket pistols. I do suggest custom Mega Blasters on your Lootas. The assured 3 shots so that you can try to get sustains off that. It's really nice when it spikes. Of course, I know you can kill yourself. You shouldn't be scared of that. More Dakka, right? That's my face. I pressed the button. With that being said, the one thing that I thought was kind of interesting here is no Storm Boys. No Storm Boys. So on your P's and Q's to score your secondaries here, something that you can't overlook, right? So if you're someone who's like, I'm just going to steal this list, bet the first thing you're going to struggle with is scoring your secondaries if you don't simply annihilate your enemy. Now, there might be a case that he simply annihilated his enemy in like 3 turns, but he didn't get full 20s on his score or 18s or 19s, across the board or anything like that. So he did have shifts contesting here that went on. Therefore, if you're looking to play this or an iteration of this, I'm going to say be aware that you're going to not have as much Storm Boys for what it looks like. Let me double check before I say that, because sometimes I'll be fat fingering stuff because I'm like, hold on, I feel like everybody has to have at least one Storm Boy. But no, I'm double checking here on BCP. Yeah, luckily it's live, so you guys know I triple check right here live. Actually, I'll let you guys look with me. Let me do that. No Storm Boys. Here you go. Here's what I get. And I'm kind of fat. Yeah, no Storm Boys. I thought that was pretty sick. I feel like Storm Boys were making it on every single list that we were looking at. So yeah, somebody asked, thank you, Arcane. That's what I'm talking about, Miguel. That's why it's fun that it's live. No Storm Boys. And I thought that was interesting too. I don't know if you thought I'm sure many people think that too, because it's almost like you're plastered in your mind, one Grout, one Storm, or at least 2. So let's look at his path to victory. Shout out to our sponsors, the Baron of Dice, as they helped us do our wall tactic dice. So shout them out. Check them out in the description, 5% off in the discount because nobody likes taxes. And shout out to Baron of Dice. They allow us to do our paint competition. So thank you very much to them. Score differentials here. Yeah, they're a staple. I know, right? So let's take a look at his first matchup from this get, where he went into Chaos Demons Strike Force, the Plague Legion. Very awesome. This is the Nurgle one where they have you take a lot of battle shock tests. Therefore, if you fail them, you obviously take some mortal wounds, and I believe they heal as well. Almost forget. So very, very in-depth damage dealing based off you failing battle shocks, which is not something we're great with orcs, and we normally love to have the OC advantage. So this becomes a fun cat and mouse game if you're just not more Dakka. Whoa, no, I'm just kidding. So we have great unclean one, Poxbringer, Rodriguez, and then Sloppity Biopipe. 1 Nurgling. Okay, so I bet you he at some point was like, man, I wish I had more Nurglings. Right? So that's what most people are kind of wondering. Maybe not on WTC. And he doesn't have a parking lot. He just has boys. But then again, that's why the 20 mana boys are sick, because most people are thinking, I can just spam Nurglings into these orc units. Me specifically, when I played more Dakka, someone brought Nurgling Brick at one point, and they got into my lines. I didn't have commandos in that iteration, and I was just kind of like, okay, that impacted me a little more than I suspected, even though I'm already somebody who constantly preaches to bringing infiltrators, right? So the one time I don't, of course, they Nurgling brick me up, right? So that's what we run into. Then we have 2, 3, 4 bricks of Plague Bearers, followed by 3 units of Beasts of Nurgle, followed by 1, 2 plague drones, and then a soul grinder. So these guys are a bit tougher to deal with than you'd expect a lot of the time as an orc player. Be aware. T5, 2 wounds to pop. They do possess an invuln. I think it's a 4 up actually, maybe a 5. I don't want to forget. So yeah, and so you got to be respectful of them. No Rodriguez. Actually, sorry, there was a Rodriguez here, which means he can cut your OC in half as well. So those boys are only OC 1 in this matchup. So nonetheless, you're gonna actually have to become more familiar with these demons. But this is sometimes a bit more of like, well, I really want to play Nurgle Demon. He did end up putting up 18 points there. I do think he just has all the tools for that. Being able to declare a wall and kind of surround some of these big unclean ones so they can't move, and then another one of your boys be able to brick up on the Plague Bearers. And to be honest, the Plague Bearers want to be on objectives, therefore they're going to get looted bombed if they're regardless, right? We carry on. So let's go into the second game where he dropped a big 20 bomb on Necron Hypercrypt. Adios, Necrons. Not specifically to you, Mark. Don't worry. I just, it's fun when orcs find Necrons. So we have Hexmark Destroyer, Locust Lord, Overlord, Plasmancer, Plasmancer, bunch of characters. 3 units of 5 Immortals, 2 units of 5 Flayed Ones, a big brick of Locust Destroyers, 2 3-man units. 3 3-man units of Locust Heavy Destroyers, 2 3-man units of Scorpack Destroyers, and then a Tomb Blade. I like the kind of spam of 3x3x3 for a bunch of these small units because they have a lot of characters here. For regenning some durability. This is Hypercrypt, yeah. So different take on Hypercrypt than I've seen. Maybe it's just where our gets are at. But I'm not familiar with the UKTC. So well, I guess it's not the UKTC because you're playing WTC terrain, but I'm saying the circuit of players since it's in the UK, right? That's what I was looking at. Now I'm second guessing myself. I'm pretty sure they were. Yeah. All right, cool. I was right. I'm gonna misspeak, and then y'all gonna be like, this American. So yeah. Big 20 bomb on there. Something about having big bricks with boys that and Zod, for example, just Zod scout take up the space. Now, did he have flayed ones? Oops, I just clicked on Jack again. Sorry, Jack. All hyped up here. Did he have flayed ones? He did. So he did have infiltrators. He did have 2 5-man units of flayed ones to infiltrate to kind of deal with Zod. But in this case, you have 20-man units of boys. You stick those flayed ones too close, throw boys up the field, and then you start the catastrophe for Hypercrypt. So it's kind of like doesn't really work out for him anyways. That's what some people. I'm not saying he techs to go against More Dakka by any means. I'm just saying as someone who's thinking to tech against it, there are ways that we can still get around that if we have that 1 CP in for however long we keep it for. Regardless, if we still keep this 1 CP Dakka, WAAAGH, we see 1 CP WAAAGH. It comes down to, is GW going to allow us to retain the gaining of benefits from the WAAAGH for the unit? If they make it 2 CP and you don't get the benefits from your data sheet that are active during the WAAAGH, that could detriment someone like Zod directly, right? So people are worried like, well, what if Zod gets nerfed? Well, what if they just super nerf the strat so it doesn't work for Gaz, for Zod, for the Morkanaut, Gorkanaut, for example, units that have data sheet abilities that are correlating with the WAAAGH. Definitely don't want them to do that, right? But we do know GW just kind of act like that sometimes. So we have to think about that as org players. What are other interesting things we see? And right off the bat, we're seeing with Jack, boys can be a very interesting thing. Now, for 2 CP, would you still want to give a 20-man unit of boys a WAAAGH? That now becomes the next question. So let's carry on to his third game, which was against the Ultramarines, Liberius Conclave. So he says, just here to dodge Jack. That's his name. Ed, you have failed. The warp was not, so the forces of the warp got to you. The Great WAAAGH found you, and the energies of the WAAAGH overcame your Ultramarines and found you. Here we are. We have Librarians of Phobos armor, 2 units of those, and the Librarian Terminator armor, Rebute Gilliman, and then Yurielven. These guys are kind of cool, like the detachment. They can choose like active army abilities such as more mobility, -1 to being hit. So they do have like abilities to stack some pretty good defensive and offensive abilities. Then they have strats that can, if you're in one of these Librarius kind of phases, then you get more stacking bonuses onto them. So he has a Desolation Squad. There is, from what I understand, the ability to gain plunging fire from Desolation Squads while you're playing on the WTC terrain. So that's pretty sick. You guys playing with that? Desolation Squad's cool. I bet Lootas are even cooler then. Then you have 2 units of Eliminators, followed by 2 units of Incursors, a Scout Squad. A big Burk of Stern Guard. Now, the cool thing about the Stern Guard in this case is they'll get like a little, I think they'll get aerial. So they'll be looking for sustained, and then I think their weapons actually are anti-monster, anti-vehicle 4+, and then they actually get devastating wounds on the 4+, and then versus their oath target, they get reroll wounds. So they're pretty much just like putting 20 wounds, 30 wounds. They will absolutely one-shot a Morkanaut, no problem if you see this from your homies. And then he's a Terminator brick. These guys would get these guys have Terminator and Thunder Hammers and stuff like that. I can't remember exactly what the punk combo was there. It's pretty powerful. They do get obviously the mobility from that, and they get advance and charge. So these dudes have covered big bricks of distance on me. I had them staged up in middle terrain. I blocked them so that they can move. I was like, all right, they shouldn't be able to get to me. Buddy rolled a 6 on his advance and then rolled on a 10 on his charge, and he was up in one shot a 20-man unit of boys I had. So it's not assured that he can one-shot a 20-man unit of boys, but I have actually had one of those units hit one of mine, but he didn't have a Painboy in that unit. So if he has a Painboy from the math, he would survive that. Nonetheless, still pretty devastating possibilities here. So you know, act appropriate in that way. 16 points right there. And then of course there's Rabute Gilliman. So we go to his 5th game, which was against another Ork player who was playing More Dakka. This was another Ork player. I think he lost this game and then the next game. So shout out to my boy Alex, part of the Great WAAAGH as well. Oh, well, I'm not sure, but you're part of an Ork player, so you're part of the Great WAAAGH. You know what I'm saying? So we have a Beast Boss, triple Big Mac with shock attack guns, one with the gob shot Thunderbus, and then the targeting squig. Mr. Boss Snickra. This is a theory on Boss Snickra here, right? Right. Alex, maybe is you know, he actually has the ability to infiltrate, therefore he can be in that middle stage terrain. The strat to remove cover does not require line of sight, it simply requires 18 inches. Therefore, Snickrot not only negates the enemy's infiltration, but it allows you to strip cover early in the game and actually take advantage of your looter's range. That's the theory behind Snickrot. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that at all. You know, it's been something we've discussed. If I play for infiltrators, I play for Mandos. The 10-man unit is commandos typically, I do, but I'm not sure about WTC if it just becomes impractical to hide them anywhere. So yeah. Then we have Gazgul Thraka. Yes, he absolutely works in this detachment. Played it as well alongside Zod. It does, you know, give its own problems to something like a Demons matchup specifically. But you know, in this case, he was against another list of More Dakka. Then we have a War Boss followed by Zagrat Watsnaga. Ooh. Then we have a Beast Snagga Boy unit followed by 2 trucks, a big brick of Breaker Boys, a 10-man unit of Gretchen, followed by a 22 size unit of Gretchen, and a 10-man unit of Gretchen. 1 brick of Lootas, the Rockets, and then a 5-man unit of Lootas. So he said, you know, possibly just didn't have all the spammy kind of stuff. Happens. 3-man unit of Meganobs. Whenever I did bring Gaz, though, I did make sure I brought 5, or if I could 6. I do think if you're gonna do this for whatever short time we can do this, bring it all. Go ahead and bring that big brick. Not only because it helps Gaz actually get up the field and actually becomes a magnificent value and target for the enemy and something for them to worry about, like a big death ball missile with that 1 CP. But it becomes hilarious for you as an Ork player when you simply just lay down the Dakka with this unit. I've did it a bunch of times. It's fun, absolutely fun. If you're gonna do the volume Dakka gun, the custom shooter where it's 6 shots a piece, that's hilarious. In this case, he just brought triple twin kill sauce. Hey, you know, maybe I'm just too flavorful here, you know, and maybe I'm wrong, but I like bringing the guns, or of course the devastating one combi blasters, right? Combi shooters. So you can even bring those, and those are kind of fun too. I think take advantage while we have them, guys. Enjoy the fun. In this case, if you're paying for the Mega Knobs and the Big Gas Brick, of course that's my bias, but enjoy. So 2 units of 5 Storm Boys and then 2 units of Tankbustas. Absolutely loving the Tankbusters. I like that everybody's paying for the 2 rockets now. It does seem like just the bomb squig became incentive, but in reality, I think most people are just like, if I want them to get their value for this much points, I have to make sure they actually pop off, which means I really want those 2 additional shots. As for the mirror in this, in the matchup, you know, the boys require a ton of investment and volume of punches with the snaggas, and it would cause you to invest your shooting resources a little bit early, but he also has less shooting resources. The breaker boys kind of want to do the same thing as gas. In my opinion, normally it's and you know, in this detachment, what I was saying is, or in any other detachment where you're just bringing like one nice, really reliable anti, you know, countercharge or you know, deterrent from a high pressure army, I tend to just pay the extra cost for gas plus a couple meganobs rather than breaker boys and a war boss, for example. I just pay the full tax of the actual, you know, most threatening unit that we can kind of bring overall as orcs, and therefore, you know, I'm not saying there's a bad choice at all because breaker boys and war boss are sick, but in this case, I don't think he just simply didn't have all of the extra shooting. That's really all I thought. You know, sometimes we just don't have all the stuff, so there's nothing wrong with Alex's list. I thought he brought a bunch of really cool things that I've personally been using and testing too. So shout out to you, Alex. Great job for the other games that you played. And then we move on to, and Jack won it all. So what does it mean to, you know, have to have, you know, lose a mirror to the guy who just won the whole event? Absolutely nothing. So great job, Alex. Then we move to the next and final game where he ended up putting up a close one. This is what I'm saying, where it wasn't just throwing it down like he just straight up lost. Sorry, he just ran everybody over. There was a rival. Like always, the Sons of Fenris decided to stand up to the Great WAAAGH and decide they wanted some of that Dakka. They wanted some of that smoke. So the champions of Russ, you know, came to hold the line to try to stop Jack Tite's Great WAAAGH. So we have Bjorn the Fell-Handed. I didn't say the name wrong. Hey, what's up, guys? You know, you chats beat me up last time. All right, so Bjorn is no joke, though, right? Bjorn is no joke. Bjorn is no joke. So reducing damage, having a 2 base armor save, being a character, throwing last cannons down range, being kind of pretty small to get where he wants to be. Great value to the army. He has a feel no pain as well. No clean way other than direct tank busters throwing everything they got into him is a good way to kill him. Typically, he can interfere with a lot of mid-table stuff with his ability to make the cost of strats also go up. Then we have the captain, followed by another captain, another captain. Then we got the old boy Murder Fang, followed by Ragnar Blackmane. So Murder Fang is my favorite of the Space Wolves. So David, you know, my cousin who co-founded the channel, he's been a Space Wolf player since the beginning. So I'm a big fan of fighting and killing and dealing with Murder Fang. And he's the guy who endlessly fights. To where if he's in range, he can pile and fight another unit. Therefore, if you were in a truck parking lot and he could just chomp through and then continue to pile into a unit, you punch him for piling into you, and then he punches through you, and then he continues. It's pretty awesome. Then we have Ragnar Blackmane, who's of course the rival of Gaz Gothraka himself. He goes off kind of like a war boss, but he's kind of like always ready. Keep in mind that this detachment acts as a pseudo kind of their version of Warhorde. They get access to sustain, and then champion Russ, and they can choose lethal as well if they start doing certain things in the battle. So it gets potent combat real quick. So we have 3 units of 5 assault intercessor. Oh wait, yeah, making sure they're not jump pack. Oh, my boy went off. Yeah. These are just assault intercessors. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units of assault intercessors. Love to see that. Followed by 2 units of impulsors, followed by 2 5-man units of assault intercessors with jump packs, infiltrator squad, invader ATV, scout squad, stern guard, Wolfen. Goodness, that is good pressure, staging, MSU, pressure, trading kind of army built up right there, right? A lot of stuff running up in all these WTC sort of layout terrains where they have those nice little L shapes and then really big ones that are set up around the middle of the field. Pretty dense terrain. Perfect for the 5-man units to kind of jump up inside of there, run out and really make it rain. And the Wolfen as well, they get extra movement because they're movement 8 base. Even his little vehicles, his invader ATVs, excellent scoring units right here for what they're for and their size, and a little bit of firepower if you need. So really, he's acting kind of orcish, right? Some impulsors, which would be their iteration of truck, followed by a lot of skirmish units that go up the field. That means when you expose your typically, looking at Jack's list, 20-man unit of Orc Boys, that becomes dangerous when they're on an objective, even with their 5 feel no pain and their wall, simply because these guys get so much volume, and then they're re-rolling wounds when someone's on an objective for the assault intercessors specifically, right? And he has them in redundancy, so he's throwing a bunch of them at you. They want to fight and contest objective because they got 2 OT apiece, so he can try to hold his natural expansion and his home, and then actually just try to duke it out with you and not be thrown back on primary and not throw out so many assets that you're deleting him with your typically really, really cheap units. So this would be an excellent game nonetheless. So Jack definitely had to work for this. No fluke here. A lot of really successful players have been making that Champions of Rust kind of punch up. So shout out to Jack Tite. I don't know, I went back over here, but he ended up winning that one with an 11-point win right there. So shout out to Jack for winning this event overall. Whoa! To his Dakka wall. So let's take a look at it one more time. He has 3 Big Macs with shock attack. One is targeting Squig, one is the Big Gob Thunderbuzz, followed by 2 Painboys and then a Zagrot Wartsnagga. 2 20-man units of boys for those 2 Painboys, followed by 3 Chuck, 2 5-man units of Flash Kits, a small Gretchen unit, followed by a large Gretchen unit, 3 10-man units of Lootas, both the spanners on each unit brought 2 custom Mega Blasters, followed by 3 Tankbusters, where their sergeants brought double rocket pistols. They did bring the pulsar rockets as well. So love it. SWAT team availability, reserve options, mid-board pressure, pressure to actually something to screen yourself and absorb the enemy's pressure if they want to do that to you. Flip enemy's natural expansion objective primary and actually cause the enemy to commit onto something that doesn't really have a reliable one-shot they usually don't have a one-shot capability to do so, right? The fact that it takes a lot of shooting for Orc Boys and you can kind of pull them back. Painboys might regen a couple, the unit can kind of stay involved, call one, and again, it runs up the field again. If the enemy can't one-shot it, or if you're staged up enough and they're being too cautious, then they can't get enough lines of fire and you pull yourself simply out of line of sight, or they don't commit enough to kill you with melee. Still the same thing occurs. They just get deleted, or they commit fully and then they get deleted. So nice concept here with Jack Tite. Love the fact that there is big mobs of boys involved in the successful GT winning list that specifically was always called to just be smooth brain Dakka of just trucks, transports, maximum of all the shooting units, and then ignore everything else. I'm glad that he proved the general's consensus wrong and brought the bunch of boys. So if we don't see walkers, it's at least nice to see some boys here, right? If you enjoyed the clip, check out the full video here. If you'd like to see more tactics, click here.
Let's get stuck in, lads!